I think he most definitely threw a shot. They saying that he probably be talking about bag. Nah, you ain't talking about bag. A bag sharing in music.
What started as a quiet rumble has now exploded into full-blown chaos, and fans can't stop asking one question. What is really going on with Pooh Shiesty and Finesse2Tymes? Over the past few days, a series of unsettling moments, online reactions, and behind-the-scenes signals have sparked serious concern among supporters. This doesn't feel like normal industry drama. This feels different. This feels heavy. Both artists have built reputations rooted in authenticity, survival, and street-earned respect. But now, that same world appears to be closing in. Fans are noticing the cracks, missed appearances, strange social media behavior, cryptic messages, and sudden silence where confidence once lived. Individually, it's alarming. Together, it's impossible to ignore. When two closely connected figures start moving unpredictably at the same time, people start wondering whether something bigger is unfolding. What's making fans especially uneasy is the timing. Just as momentum seemed to be rebuilding, chaos stepped back into the picture. Rumors are spreading fast, fueled by speculation and incomplete information. Some believe outside pressure is mounting. Others think internal conflicts or unresolved issues are resurfacing. And then there are those who fear the worst, that past decisions are finally catching up in ways no one can control anymore. Social media has become a courtroom without rules. Every post is analyzed. Every lyric is treated like a confession. Every absence is read as confirmation. Supporters are split between concern and frustration, torn between defending their favorites and questioning the patterns they keep seeing. The narrative isn't being driven by facts. It's being driven by fear. Fear that something is slipping. Fear that this situation could spiral beyond repair. What makes this moment so intense is that it doesn't come with clear answers. No official statements. No explanations. Just tension hanging in the air, growing heavier by the hour. Fans don't just feel entertained by the drama. They feel invested, worried, almost protective. Because when artists represent survival and resilience, watching them struggle feels personal. This isn't just about music or image anymore. It's about stability, direction, and whether chaos is temporary or warning sign. As the silence continues and the rumors grow louder, one thing becomes undeniable. Something is happening behind the scenes. And until clarity arrives, fans will remain on edge, wondering if this is just another storm or the beginning of something far more serious. The tension didn't announce itself loudly. It slipped in quietly, disguised as minor changes that only the most attentive fans picked up on. At first, it was easy to brush off. A missed appearance here, a delayed post there. But as days turned into weeks, those small irregularities began forming a pattern that felt impossible to ignore. Pooh Shiesty and Finesse2Tymes had always projected control, confidence, and forward motion. Now, that rhythm felt disrupted, like a song playing slightly offbeat. Fans didn't need official confirmation to feel uneasy. The energy had shifted, and everyone could sense it. What made the situation heavier was how deeply connected both artists are to their audience. Their music isn't just entertainment, it's testimony. It speaks to survival, pressure, and pushing through environments that don't offer second chances. So when fans noticed signs of instability, it didn't register as gossip. It registered as concern. Supporters weren't asking for drama. They were searching for reassurance. The silence that followed only intensified that feeling, creating space for worry to grow unchecked. Social media quickly became a mirror reflecting collective anxiety. Comment sections filled with questions instead of praise. Fans compared timelines, pointed out inconsistencies, and tried to make sense of what they were seeing. It wasn't malicious, it was protective. When people feel connected to artists who represent resilience, watching those figures struggle feels personal. Every unexplained absence felt like a warning sign. Every vague message felt heavier than intended. In the absence of clarity, imagination took over. The overlap between Pooh Shiesty and Finesse2Tymes added another layer of unease. If only one of them appeared off balance, fans might have waited patiently. But when both began showing signs of disruption around the same time, concern turned into alarm. People started wondering whether shared pressures were closing in, whether unresolved issues were resurfacing, or whether something behind the scenes was spiraling faster than anyone expected. No concrete answers existed, but the coincidence felt too precise to dismiss. Industry watchers noticed it too. Momentum, once strong, appeared fragile. Conversations slowed. Anticipation stalled. In an industry that moves fast and forgets even faster, hesitation can be dangerous. Support doesn't disappear overnight. It fades quietly, replaced by distance and caution. That shift is rarely visible to the public, but fans felt it instinctively. When excitement turns into uncertainty, something fundamental has changed. Emotionally, this period carried weight far beyond headlines. Pressure has a way of isolating people, especially those expected to appear unshaken at all times. Strength becomes a performance rather than a state of being. Fans could sense that strain, even without words to explain it. The concern wasn't about image, it was about stability, about whether chaos was temporary or signaling something deeper. What stood out most was the lack of direction. No clear statements, no grounding explanations, just fragments, moments that felt disconnected but collectively unsettling. Silence, in moments like this, doesn't feel neutral. It feels loud. It invites interpretation. And interpretation rarely leans toward optimism when fear is already present. Fans didn't want details. They wanted assurance that things weren't unraveling. This moment wasn't about downfall or judgment. It was about awareness. The realization that something beneath the surface was shifting, and pretending otherwise wouldn't stop it. Pooh Shiesty and Finesse2Tymes hadn't lost their supporters. In fact, they had their full attention. People were watching closely, hoping the next move would bring clarity instead of more questions. The chaos hadn't fully revealed itself yet, but its presence was undeniable. Like the air before a storm, heavy and still, charged with uncertainty. Whatever was unfolding behind the scenes was already shaping perception, altering expectations, and raising concern that couldn't be dismissed. This wasn't the end of anything, but it was a moment everyone realized that ignoring the signs was no longer an option. As the days passed, the uneasiness didn't fade, it deepened. What began as subtle concern slowly transformed into a constant undercurrent of tension that fans couldn't shake. Every new moment, no matter how small, seemed to confirm the feeling that things were no longer steady. People weren't reacting to one event. They were reacting to accumulation. Too many pauses, too many unanswered questions, too many moments that felt out of character for artists known for control and confidence. The silence started to feel intentional, and that's when interpretations became darker. Supporters debated whether staying quiet was a strategy or a sign of being overwhelmed. In situations like this, silence can be read in two ways: discipline or distress. Without clarity, fans were left to choose whichever explanation felt more believable. And for many, given the patterns they were noticing, optimism was becoming harder to hold on to. The lack of direction didn't calm the situation, it fed it. Online conversations shifted tone. Where there was once excitement and anticipation, there was now concern wrapped in frustration. Some fans urged patience, reminding others that real lives exist beyond public timelines. Others argued that patterns matter, especially when they repeat. The divide wasn't hostile, but it was emotional. Everyone wanted the same thing: stability, but no one knew how close or far that goal really was. In that uncertainty, anxiety filled the gaps. The pressure of expectations played a major role. Pooh Shiesty and Finesse2Tymes aren't just artists. They're symbols of perseverance to many listeners. Their music reflects environments where mistakes are costly and survival requires awareness. That's why any hint of chaos hits harder. Fans don't just hear lyrics, they believe in what those lyrics represent. When the people behind that message appear unsettled, it creates cognitive dissonance. The image and the reality stop aligning, and that disconnect is uncomfortable to watch. Behind the scenes, pressure rarely arrives alone. It brings isolation with it. As attention intensifies, trust becomes harder to maintain. People begin second-guessing motives, questioning loyalty and retreating inward. Even genuine support can feel fragile when the environment feels unstable. Fans could sense that distance growing, not through statements, but through absence. Absence of reassurance, absence of presence, absence of the energy that once felt unmistakable. Speculation continued to build, not because fans wanted drama, but because human nature seeks explanations. When clarity is missing, narratives form. Some believe the chaos was external, pressure from circumstances beyond control. Others suspected internal conflict or unresolved issues resurfacing. No version was confirmed, yet all of them gained traction. Once speculation becomes widespread, it stops being about truth and starts being about belief. And belief can shape perception faster than facts ever could. Momentum, once so carefully built, began to feel fragile. Momentum doesn't disappear suddenly, it erodes. Opportunities hesitate. Conversations pause. Interest cools. None of this happens loudly, but fans notice the shift instinctively. They feel it when anticipation turns into waiting, when excitement turns into concern. The worry wasn't about popularity, it was about trajectory, about whether this moment would become a turning point or just another obstacle overcome quietly. Emotionally, this phase felt heavier than the first. Recognition had already happened. Now came anticipation mixed with dread. Supporters wanted a sign, any sign, that things were under control. But instead of reassurance, they received more uncertainty. That uncertainty lingered, stretching time and amplifying fear. The longer it lasted, the harder it became to believe everything was fine. This stretch wasn't defined by explosions or confrontations. It was defined by stillness, and stillness can be unsettling when tension is already present. Like standing in a room where something feels wrong but no one says it out loud. The concern wasn't about immediate collapse, it was about slow unraveling, about whether chaos, once invited, would quietly settle in and become normal. What stood out most was how invested people remained. Fans didn't walk away, they leaned closer. They analyzed, discussed, worried, and hoped. That level of attention isn't casual. It comes from connection, and that connection made the uncertainty sting even more. Everyone sensed that the situation was moving toward a defining moment, even if no one knew what it would look like. The atmosphere felt charged, unresolved, and heavy with expectation. Whatever clarity would come next, whether calming or explosive, was being shaped by this very moment. The tension wasn't just building anymore, it was waiting. The tension eventually reached a point where it could no longer sit quietly in the background. It began seeping into everything, shaping how fans interpreted even the smallest details. A single post, a brief appearance, a vague caption. Nothing existed in isolation anymore. Everything felt loaded with meaning. Supporters weren't just watching, they were reading between lines, trying to decode what wasn't being said. And the more they searched for clarity, the more complicated the picture became. What made this stage especially unsettling was how normal everything looked on the surface. There were no dramatic confrontations, no explosive headlines confirming anyone's fears. Instead, there was a strange sense of restraint, like something being deliberately held back. That restraint made people uneasy. When chaos is loud, it can be confronted. When it's quiet, it feels unpredictable. Fans started wondering whether this calm was temporary, or if it was the calm that comes before something breaks. The emotional toll of sustained pressure became more visible. Carrying expectations, scrutiny, and uncertainty at the same time is exhausting, especially when your life is already lived in the public eye. Confidence can start to feel performative. Strength can feel like a mask. Fans sense that weight, even without direct acknowledgement. The energy felt different, not defeated, but burdened, like moving forward while constantly looking over your shoulder. Trust also became a quiet theme in the conversation. When situations grow tense, trust is often the first thing tested. Who's really there? Who's watching for the wrong reasons? Who benefits from the chaos? Fans speculated about inner circles, about influence, about whether the people closest were helping stabilize things or unintentionally making them worse. These questions didn't come from judgment. They came from concern. When instability appears, people look for anchors, and they worry when they can't see them. Online discussions shifted again, becoming more serious, more reflective. The jokes faded. The casual commentary disappeared. In its place were long threads, thoughtful messages, and genuine worry. Supporters talked about patterns, about history, about how pressure has affected artists before. Comparisons were drawn, not to shame, but to understand. People weren't predicting disaster. They were hoping to avoid it. Momentum continued to hang in the balance. Not lost, but paused. That pause felt critical. Pauses can be strategic, but they can also signal uncertainty. Fans debated which one this was. Some believed it was a necessary step back, a moment to regroup and regain control. Others feared it was hesitation born from overwhelm. Both interpretations existed side by side, and neither could be confirmed. That ambiguity kept the tension alive. What stood out most during this period was how much responsibility people placed on the next move. Whatever came next, spoken or unspoken, was expected to carry weight. A clear direction could calm fears. Continued silence could deepen them. The situation had reached a point where neutrality no longer existed. Doing nothing was still doing something, and everyone knew it. There was also a growing awareness that chaos doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like disconnection, like drifting, like losing alignment between intention and outcome. Fans didn't need proof of disaster to feel concerned. They were reacting to imbalance, to a sense that things weren't fully grounded, that the foundation felt shaky even if it hadn't cracked yet. This phase was defined by waiting, but not passive waiting. It was active, emotional, heavy waiting. The kind where hope and worry coexist uncomfortably. Supporters wanted to believe that control would be regained, that this tension would lead to clarity rather than collapse. At the same time, they couldn't ignore the signs that something needed to change. The chaos hadn't peaked yet, but it had matured. It was no longer just a feeling, it was a presence. Something shaping conversations, expectations, and perceptions in real time. And as that presence grew more familiar, one truth became unavoidable. Whatever happened next would matter more than anything that came before. By this stage, the uncertainty had become a constant companion rather than a passing phase. Fans weren't waking up expecting answers anymore. They were waking up expecting tension. It had settled into the background of every conversation, shaping expectations before anything even happened. That kind of atmosphere changes how people perceive time. Days feel longer, silence feels heavier, and every small development feels bigger than it actually is because it's measured against weeks of unanswered questions. The dynamic between visibility and absence grew more complicated. When moments of presence did appear, they didn't bring relief, they raised more questions. Short appearances, brief updates, or controlled interactions felt calculated rather than reassuring. Fans weren't sure whether to see them as signs of stability or signs of damage control. In an environment this fragile, even good news struggles to land properly. Everything passes through a filter of skepticism created by prolonged uncertainty. Emotionally, this stretch exposed how draining constant pressure can be. Carrying expectations from millions while navigating unseen challenges takes a toll that doesn't always show immediately. Strength can start to look rigid instead of confident. Calm can feel forced instead of natural. Supporters noticed these shifts, not because they wanted to criticize, but because they were paying close attention. When people care, they notice changes others might miss. Conversations around responsibility also became more prominent. Fans debated whether stepping back was the right move or whether more openness was needed. Some believed protecting privacy was essential to regaining control. Others felt that silence was allowing narratives to harden in damaging ways. There was no consensus, only frustration that clarity remained out of reach. The situation had reached a point where no approach felt risk-free. The sense of shared pressure between Pooh Shiesty and Finesse2Tymes continued to unsettle supporters. Whether or not their challenges were directly connected, The timing created an emotional link in the public's mind. Fans worried about the compounded weight of expectation, about how shared environments can amplify stress rather than absorb it. When two people navigate instability simultaneously, it can either strengthen bonds or magnify strain. From the outside, it was impossible to tell which was happening. Speculation slowed but deepened. Instead of rapid-fire theories, discussions became more layered and serious. People talked about cycles, about how pressure repeats itself when lessons aren't fully learned. They referenced past examples from the industry, not as predictions, but as cautionary reminders. The tone wasn't sensational anymore, it was reflective. Fans weren't asking for drama, they were hoping for growth. Momentum still felt suspended, but now that suspension carried consequence. In fast-moving spaces, pauses don't just delay progress, they risk being replaced by something else. Attention shifts, energy moves on. Supporters understood this, and that understanding fueled their concern. They didn't want to see potential wasted or direction lost because of unresolved tension. The worry wasn't about popularity, it was about long-term stability. What made this phase particularly heavy was the feeling that choices were being made quietly, out of sight. Who stays close? Who steps back? What paths are avoided? These decisions rarely come with announcements, but their effects are real. Fans could sense that recalibration was happening, even if they didn't know what it looked like. That awareness created both hope and fear. Hope that things were being handled, fear that the cost might be higher than expected. There was also a subtle shift in how supporters spoke about the future. Early optimism gave way to cautious hope. People still believed in recovery, but they understood it wouldn't be simple or immediate. Stability would require intention, boundaries, and perhaps uncomfortable change. That realization didn't push fans away. It pulled them closer, rooting for discipline instead of spectacle. This moment wasn't defined by collapse or resolution. It was defined by endurance, by how long tension could be carried without breaking something essential. The chaos wasn't loud anymore, it was persistent. And persistence can be just as powerful as explosion. As this phase unfolded, one thing became clear. Whatever clarity eventually arrives will be shaped by how this period is handled. Not by what's said publicly, but by how pressure is managed privately. Fans could feel that something meaningful was being decided right now, even if they couldn't see it. And until that decision becomes visible, the concern remains, quiet, watchful, and deeply invested. Eventually, the tension reached a point where it could no longer simply linger. It demanded resolution, one way or another. Not through loud announcements or dramatic confrontations, but through direction. Fans could feel that this stretch was different from everything before it. The uncertainty was no longer just something happening around the situation. It had become the central force shaping what came next. This was a moment where drifting stopped being an option. What stood out most was how intentional everything suddenly felt. Even in silence, there was a sense of movement, quiet, deliberate movement. Choices were being made behind closed doors, not for optics, but for survival and stability. Fans began to sense that whatever chaos had been brewing was now being confronted internally. Not rushed, not panicked, carefully. And that alone changed the emotional temperature. Concern remained, but it was now mixed with cautious anticipation. The idea of growth started surfacing more frequently in conversations. Not the polished, inspirational version often sold publicly, but the uncomfortable kind. The kind that requires distance, reevaluation, and letting go of habits that once felt necessary. Supporters began framing the situation less as a crisis and more as a crossroads. One path led back into familiar patterns. The other required discipline, patience, and restraint. Both paths carried weight, but only one offered longevity. There was also a noticeable shift in how fans talked about accountability. Earlier, concern focused on what might be happening to Pooh Shiesty and Finesse2Tymes. Now, discussions included what needed to happen within. That wasn't judgment, it was realism. Pressure exposes weak points, and ignoring them only guarantees repetition. Supporters weren't asking for perfection. They were hoping for awareness, for decisions that reflected lessons learned rather than instincts repeated. Emotionally, this phase carried a strange calm. Not relief, but acceptance. The understanding that chaos doesn't always end with a single moment. It fades when its fuel is removed. That fuel is often reaction, impulse, and noise. By slowing everything down, the situation began to lose some of its power. Fans noticed that too. The absence of constant sparks made space for reflection, both for the artists and the people watching. Momentum, while still fragile, no longer felt suspended in free fall. It felt paused with intention. And there's a critical difference between those two states. One implies loss of control. The other suggests preparation. Supporters began to believe that this pause could become a foundation rather than a setback, if handled correctly. That belief didn't come from words. It came from restraint. The connection between Pooh Shiesty and Finesse2Tymes was also viewed through a more grounded lens. Instead of speculation about shared chaos, fans began considering shared responsibility. Navigating pressure alongside someone else can either reinforce bad habits or encourage accountability. Which direction this would take remained unclear, but the awareness itself marked growth. People weren't looking for separation or conflict, they were hoping for balance. What became undeniable was that the margin for error had disappeared. There were no more free passes, no more room for careless moves. Every step forward would now be measured against this period of tension. That reality can feel suffocating, but it can also sharpen focus. Fans understood that the next chapter wouldn't be built on hype. It would be built on consistency. This stretch wasn't about reclaiming headlines or proving anything to skeptics. It was about regaining alignment between intention and action, between image and reality. The most meaningful changes rarely announce themselves. They show up over time, through patterns that feel different because they are different. Supporters weren't expecting instant clarity. They were watching for direction. As the noise gradually softened, one truth remained clear. This moment would be remembered not for the chaos itself, but for how it was handled. Chaos is common. Response is rare. Whether this becomes a turning point or warning will depend entirely on what follows, not on what already happened. For fans, the worry hadn't disappeared, but it had matured. It transformed into guarded hope. The kind that doesn't demand spectacle, only stability. The kind that understands setbacks don't define people, patterns do. And as this phase closed, that understanding lingered. Whatever comes next won't just shape careers. It will shape trust. The storm hadn't fully cleared, but the direction of the wind had changed. And sometimes, that's enough to believe that forward movement is still possible. This situation has shown just how quickly pressure, silence, and uncertainty can shift the energy around artists people care deeply about. For fans, it's not about picking sides or fueling rumors. It's about hoping for stability, growth, and smarter decisions moving forward. Pooh Shiesty and Finesse2Tymes are at a critical point where every choice matters more than ever, and how they handle this moment will shape what comes next. If you've been watching closely, your perspective matters. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think this pause leads to clarity or more chaos? Stay locked in, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss what unfolds next. We'll continue breaking down the real developments behind the headlines. Without the noise, only the moments that truly matter.